today, come behind the scenes with me on an editorial basketball photo shoot that I did with my friend Lauren. The whole goal of this shoot was to do an elevated magazine style, like basketball shoot that gave sporty, but then also gave the idea of that Lauren is multi-talented and is also an actress, creative, and just socialite. Lauren's a basketball player. The whole goal of this shoot was to create and capture like a 4 to 8 image photo set that paid a homage to her basketball roots. For this shoot, I used the Fuji GFX 100sii. I just recently picked up that camera. Incredible medium format. I love a wide field of view, and I chose to use the 20 to 35 millimeter GFX lens for this one to get the equivalent of about 16 millimeters to 28 millimeters, because with medium format, you multiply everything by 0.8 to get a full frame field of view equivalent. We chose to use Adidas as the brand that we wanted to emphasize. So she's worked with Adidas in the past, and then these we sent to Adidas after the shoot, because you never know what's going to happen. And I also created a millinote, so let's run through that. And what you'll see here is this one sometimes is a bit more in depth, but honestly, this one was a pretty straightforward one. So I just had what the vision was, which here was an elevated magazine style basketball editorial photo shoot. And then I also mentioned that we were going to document like a behind the scenes like you're seeing now and create that walkthrough of the shoot. And I had originally the GFX 100sii and the Leica Q3, because the Leica Q3 is one of my favorite cameras, and I think that it's such a good one to capture authentic moments. However, I ended up not touching it and just using the GFX for this one, and I absolutely love the GFX. And then it's always good to have an inspiration reference, and for this one, since it was just photos, I know with video usually I'll like dive deeper and I'll have specific frames to tell a story, but with photo I love to keep it a bit more open, especially with editorial type shoot. And so you'll see here I made a Pinterest that I shared with Lauren of Inspo, and we went back and forth of the style. And what this is good for is just getting like a general mood and a general vibe of how you want your end product to be, and then it gives you a good set to jump off to find like the perfect location and perfect outfit and perfect like indoor outdoor type vibe. And here I love flash, and I think that that really is something that elevates a good editorial photo shoot in general, especially daytime flash done correctly. And so we utilized a flash for this shoot as well. I just really vibed with all these photos. Like, as you'll see here, I wanted to do some slow shutter. And so I pulled some references of some movement she could do. And this is a tennis player, but it's transferable into the basketball world too, because it's just movement and sport. And then some shots like this with the basketball, and then potentially a more pose setup like this. And I just think having these as a vision and a mood board is so helpful, because then when you get there on the day of the shoot, you can actually reference it. Going into the potential styling options, and it's good to choose a singular brand as like your end goal, because when you do that, you can use it as either spec work, you can share it with the brand for them to potentially use, instead of having like a Adidas top, a Nike bottom, an Adidas shoe, or like a Brooks shoe, or whatever it might be. And for this shoot, we decided on an all Adidas fit, but you'll see here, I pulled some references for Adidas, Nike, and Free People, because those were the brands that we had communicated that we both liked. And then of course the location. And for this one, kept it simple, especially with it being a 4 to 8 image photo set in terms of the final product. Chose this beautiful public basketball court in LA that overlooks the ocean, and it was like an hour drive away for both of us, and I think it ended up being the perfect spot for this shoot. And now we're gonna go back into the photos itself. It's a good thing to start the shoot just getting into it and warming up yourself, but then also the model. And here I recommend doing some like environmental portraits because you can really focus more on like a wide perspective and it's not about details and close up. So you can be a bit more loose with it. And I like to do just a few casual like sitting portraits for this case. And I loved the black and white here that Fuji produces. And then this one, I just really liked the perspective of like the environmental portrait to where she's just like casually looking at the camera, and it kind of like signifies to the user or like the viewer that we're about to go on this like journey, but you don't know what journey yet. And then just another close-up portrait that I really liked. And then here we started to integrate the basketball. With the basketball, we decided against having her like touching it or anything like that, and just have it in the frame to kind of like pay homage to it. Like it's there, but it's not the main character, and like she's the main character. And we started on the court to have the basketball hoop in the back, just doing the editorial type poses. So it's still sporty, but it kind of like makes that statement like, nah, I'm like, this is who I am. And then as you can see with these daytime flashes, she is lit up here, and without the flash, it would be a bit more of a silhouette-y version of her. And I think that's the cool thing with flash, is that you can expose the actual image itself to where maybe the subject isn't as bright, but the background is perfectly exposed without flash. But then when you add that flash in, and during the daytime, you have to kind of like make it as strong as the sun that is shining. That's a pro tip, is it might have to be brighter than you think. And then here you can see she's just really illuminated from that flash. And I think this is a beautiful image. And we did a few different shots here. And this one I really loved because it's just like a cool little portrait. You always want a few different variety of shots where like they're looking at the camera, looking away, because you never know when you get into post which portion of it is going to be used for the story set when you're going for like a structured story to tell. And this one caught my eye because if you look at her eyes, they're just stunning. And that is her natural eye color. And I thought with the green of her eyes and the green of the background, it really shines. And then here, I love getting low and like shooting upward with a wide angle because it makes the subject look super powerful. And here I wanted to just make it a little distorted, but where she's not distorted, right, is 16 mil equivalent of full frame. And I think this was a really cool image because it just shows like she is the forefront. And she is this powerful person and confident and beautiful and everything like that. Another one where you just pose with the ball, like basketball, but editorial, right? And this was one of the 4 final images of the photo set, but we ended up cropping, and I'll show you all those at the end. We ended up cropping it to just be more focused on her, which is also a fun, creative way of getting through these shoots, because you never know what type of perspective shift can happen when you crop an image. And that's something that excites me about like photography and even video. But I think that ideally you get as close to the final image as you want in camera. And we did, but then realized we really loved a horizontal landscape orientation. And to do that for these portraits, we had to crop them to horizontal and then be a bit more flexible with the final image. This was also one of the final ones. I just wanted to get her alone, kind of just isolated with the ball on the court. And then we started to move away, utilizing the basketball court, and had this image of her like just having some movement and throwing and all that good stuff, because I think having motion in photography is such an underutilized tool that I don't see as often, especially in like the sports world. And I think that motion blur gives more of emotion if it is intentional. And coming from the video world, I love motion blur. And so I always utilize that now in my photography and have found that it becomes a staple for me. And I just love this image here that's a bit more of a slow shutter, because it really captures just like a moment, right? She's in her own world, yet she's also present. These actually didn't make the final image set, but I wanted to do some close-up photos of the shoe. Like these in particular did not, but there was one that you'll see in a minute that did. And yeah, I just thought these were really cool, and you just blast the flash directly at the shoe. This one was both her and mine one of our favorites, but then it's tough. Sometimes they don't make, even if it's a favorite photo, it doesn't go with the final image set, and you have to make that decision to like leave it out. And that's why I'm showing it to you now. It didn't happen to make the final set of images, but it's still a beautiful image. And I think that is one thing I've learned over time. It's okay to have to choose what to leave out. And that's a good thing. Less is more. And then as we move on, the hero image that we wanted here was to have her laying down with her head hovering or like touching the ball in landscape orientation, and her just being like, this is me, and treat it like a billboard. And we just wanted her to be like, hey, this is me world, and I'm taking ownership of my life, and this is the world that I live in. And this is so cool to me because it's giving actress, it's giving sports, it's giving editorial, it's giving comfortable in who you are. And I think that is the beautiful thing about hero images, is that they can really be whatever you want them to be. And we decided on this one. And as you can see, with this ended up being the final image that went as the first one in the set, because it has the basketball hoop in the back here blurred out, but then it brings focus to her staring directly into the camera, like looking directly at you, or like looking life directly into the lens. And then this is the one with the ball and the shoe. We thought that instead of just having the shoe, incorporating the basketball and the hoop in a wide perspective was nice. And so this is how we decided to do it. And she wore these cool little socks that also emphasize the fit. Let's jump into a quick edit of it. This was the before of the shot here. To spare you all the editing aspects of it, I have my own preset that I use for this one that is a base color that I usually start out with from just personal preference of what I like. And as you can see here, it gets you really close. I wanted to make it more like filmic and more like portrait-like. And so I really like pinkish skin tones and also just like very green greens. And here I'll show you before and after. So on the left here, you can see my edit, and then on the right was the before. And what's wild is you can see the in-camera image is relatively close to what the final is. I just like to bring down the highlights and the whites, and then also shift hues if needed. So I usually start in this tone curve because I think that, as you can see, it really affects the image, right? And here I wanted to bring in more contrast. Let me know, maybe I'll release a few presets as we go, but coloring is such a personal thing. It takes a while to get there. And I think that I take inspiration from quite a few photographers when I do this. And I think another cool note to have is that with this Fuji camera, you can, or whatever camera you have, some cameras have built-in profiles, and here I'll show you what Adobe Color looks like. It kind of changes the image, to be honest. Like, it kind of makes it a bit more like digital to me. And that's the one thing I love about Fuji. I change the profile to Provia, or the standard profile. And as you can see here, I'll go back and forth. This is Adobe Color, and this is standard Adobe, or this is standard Fuji. And it just makes everything a bit more soft and a bit more vibrant. And to me, if there's a use for it and if you're able to do it, why not, right? And I think it looks beautiful, and it's a big reason why I own and picked up the GFX for photo work. And yeah, this, you can look at these settings, but I think a big thing outside of the tone curve that I'll touch on is the luminance here. It makes a big difference. As you can see here, the green is a bit more bright and it was a little too poppy for my opinion, from her and the subject. So I brought it down in the final image. And then orange is usually very powerful on skin. As you can see, as I move it, it really changes the effect of her. And I like to keep as even as possible. Like here I have it at -3, which I didn't really touch, but sometimes you really bring it up. And those are some pro tips. But yeah, you just kind of play around with the HSL sliders until you have something that you like, and to make sure that the skin tones are still intact and beautiful. And I like to make the skin tones as close as possible to the original image here. I like to bring down the highlights, as it really softens the image a bit with the highlights and the whites brought down. The whites especially, because if you see, here's it at normal, kind of bright, it still works. But when you bring it down, it makes the skin a bit more muted, and I love that muted highlight look. To wrap this video, I think it's important to note to be so intentional with the work that you're doing. And what I mean by that is you don't have to go and be like, I'm gonna get this image, this image, this image, and this image. A word vomit right there. But I think it's important to have an idea of what the goal of the end product is, right? And then let there be fluidity in the types of images that are captured. As you can see here, I had an idea that we were going to use initially the court, the basketball, and her as the hero image, but we saw this beautiful green grass next to the court that overlooked the ocean, and we decided, no, that's where we're going to do it. Get close and personal in the grass, have her lay down, and do a perspective that isn't as seen. And I think that is the beauty in creating, and that's the beauty in taking chances and exploring your own narrative with these things. And yeah, you could have been doing anything, and you chose to spend a little bit of time together with me, and I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one. I love you.